Andrew from the Astra Review, and there's a local community protest going on in my community, and it's actually really exciting. It's for Black Lives Matter. So I think I'm going to head over and give it a little bit of coverage. Demonstrations. Do you think there's something that we need more in America, or do you think this is kind of like an over-exaggeration or an overreaction?
You know, they have the right to come out and say what they think is right, which, I mean, what I've seen over the videos and what I've seen on social media is that a lot of police officers, I'm not saying all police officers, but there's been a rise in numbers of police brutality.
What do you think about these demonstrations kind of in general? Do you think these are like a net positive for the nation?
Yeah, I think it's positive. I think it's a very good thing going on right now.
Do you believe the charge that was leveled against the officers that were involved with the killing of George Floyd, do you think the charge of second-degree murder is sufficient?
First-degree murder is where I'd feel more comfortable.
Do you think this is a problem just within law enforcement, or do you think it's within the entire American society?
Well, I think it's not just in law enforcement. I think that like our country as a whole is built off of racism. I mean, since like the first time that the first slave boat came to America, and ever since then, we've just built around like that. We built upon that, and I think that not only is it a problem in law enforcement, it's a problem in the medical industry, where Black women are more likely to be killed than any other women by accident. And I think it's a system in our court system and how that Black Americans are more likely to be convicted.
What would you recommend to like policymakers and like politicians to help like reduce this this kind of police brutality and police violence against like minorities?
Just stop the racism. I mean, that's all we gotta do. That's it.
Do you think this is a problem that runs just within like law enforcement, or do you think this is a problem that's just part of American culture?
Well, I mean, it'd be a bad thing to say that's American culture, right? That does not represent America. That, you know, I'm not, you know, it's there. It's always been there. But just recently, you know, we've seen the rise in numbers. And definitely we should look to see how we can lower those numbers and, you know, make this country a little bit safer.
Definitely, they only got charged because of the big protests that were happening, not just, you know, there, but on all the states. And I feel like, obviously, the country needs to work better on that. That, you know, just because we protested, that was the only reason why they got arrested and, you know, charged in the first place. Because everyone else, other Black people that have been murdered, still have not been charged or been arrested or anything like that. So I feel like they need to work a lot on that.
To you, what is justice?
I think justice is making sure that, like, not only the 4 cops that helped kill George Floyd, but no other cops are allowed to get away with murder. And I think that we need to see that like every single cop knows that they will be brought to justice if they are going to kill people. And I think that until we see there is like accurate justice in our society, then we have to keep protesting.
Okay. And finally, do you have any sort of policy recommendations to like avoid this happening ever again?
Well, I think that first off, we need more training, more than like 110 hours for our police officers. They need de-escalation training. They need training to know how to handle people with disabilities, because that's not a thing. They need maybe like training on how to use other methods of how to like calm the situation down other than just using their firearms. Like just in general, like there needs to be updates to our police system.
Well, that was my experience with the Black Lives Matter protest. It was definitely really insightful. It was nice to talk to people and see how they were feeling about this stuff, because I think it's something that needs to be talked about, and I think it's also important that we get a lot of truths out there, but also make sure we need to understand what isn't truth, or we need to understand what isn't just hyperbole and calls to action with things that are actual truths and things that are actually going on. Because this has a lot of people fired up, and it's a very hot button issue right now. It's very pressing. And it's important to make sure that we can have a dialogue between the right and the left that's constructive and productive, because I think everyone in this issue can really agree that what happened was wrong and injustice. But we need to understand the real cause of it, whether it truly is racism, or if it's just a case of police brutality across the board, whether it would happen, whether the suspect was white or black. Because again, white suspects are also killed by police officers through police brutality. So we need to make sure that this is truly an act of racism before we do anything sort of hyperbole. And also, we need to finally ask ourselves at the end of the day, what is our end goal? Because after the police officers that were involved with the killing of George Floyd, we need to see, well, what are we kind of leading up to? And I think some heavier charges are going to be pressed against them in the future, such as first degree. So I don't know, when it comes to this asking a question of justice, I think this is a question that gets overlooked, because really, at the end of the day, these people were convicted, and we need to see just how much further we want to go with this, because it's important that we don't get carried away and treat every sort of incident as a racist incident. Because otherwise, what we end up doing is we just end up demonizing each other. Because not all police officers have the same opinions or do it for the same reasons. Just like we do any job, we do them for our own reasons. Some people do it for the money. Some people do it because it's their passion. So again, we need to ask ourselves whether it's just an institutional problem or it's something that is just a one-off case or a very occasional case that, again, we can all agree is horrific. But again, a one-off case, and something that should be looked at as a whole, because no matter what, at the end of the day, we're all Americans. And I think that's one thing that we forget a lot when we talk about these conversations. We often divide ourselves. Oh, I'm a black American. Oh, I'm a Muslim American. Oh, I'm an Asian American. And we, in these instances, seem to be creating more division, when I think in reality that one of the best solutions of doing it is thinking of us all as Americans. That's the best way, I believe, to solve this issue, because if we focus it only on a certain color or only certain injustice against a certain type of people, we end up ignoring other things that happen to other people. Because we're just so focused on this one kind of hate or just backlashing against this one type of oppression, against this one certain type of group, that we end up forgetting and taking priorities about certain types of struggles that are going on. Like things such as poverty, we start forgetting about those issues. We only focus on the race things. We only think it only affects a certain group, when in reality, anyone can be poor. Anyone can die. We are all the same. So, and we can all be affected by the same afflictions. So, it's really a question of, we should really just ask ourselves this question more, is how are we viewing this issue? Are we viewing this as an injustice against me, or are we viewing this as an injustice against our people as a whole? But, well, that was my coverage, and this was my afterthoughts of the protest, and I hope you all enjoyed. I do want to start making videos more often. I've been kind of busy in the past couple weeks, and I do want to start doing this more, because I think it's important to start getting the news out and start reporting more. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see y'all next time.